Today we're going to be reporting on two disciplinary actions, two different incidents. One is involving Tanisha Anderson, and the other is involving some things that went on at the sex crime unit. And so I'll have the chief give you a little brief history, and then the director will come up and give you the decisions that were made. Okay? Chief.
Thanks, Mayor. Good morning. As the mayor stated, we're here to announce some of the administrative actions that were taken as a result of two incidents that happened here in the city of Cleveland. The first being the tragic incident that occurred between our Cleveland Division of Police officers and Tanisha Anderson. The facts of that case were presented in an administrative hearing to the Director of Public Safety after a lot of investigation by a lot of other agencies outside of Cleveland, and there's a culmination of that case, and I'll let the director talk about that later. Also, there was a series of incidents that happened within our sex crimes child abuse unit by one detective, cases that went uninvestigated for an extended period of time, and again, thoroughly investigated by the Division of Police, as well as folks outside of the division, agencies outside of the Division of Police. And as a result of that, an administrative hearing was held with the Director of Public Safety, and we also have the results of that hearing also. I just want to remind folks that this is still an ongoing process. The discipline is not the end of it. There is a due process series of events that could happen in the near future with these cases. So with that said, I will bring up Director McGrath.
Thanks, Chief. Good morning, everyone. Like the Chief said, the Tanisha Anderson investigation, there was an administrative review conducted by the Division of Police. Recommendations were made relative to charges in that particular case. Charge papers were drawn up, forwarded to my office, and I conducted the disciplinary hearings for both officers involved, Officer Aldridge and Officer Myers. Prior to the disciplinary hearing, we reviewed all the investigative reports, which included the administrative investigations conducted by the Division of Police. There was a criminal investigation conducted by the Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Office. There was another investigation conducted by the Attorney General's Office for the state of Ohio. And then there was two medical investigations by medical examiners. One was here in Cuyahoga County, and the other one was in Franklin County in Columbus. After reviewing all that information, conducting the disciplinary hearings for Aldridge and Myers, reviewing the transcripts from the disciplinary hearings, I sustained the charges that were recommended by the Division of Police, and I suspended Officer Aldridge for 10 days and issued a written warning to Officer Myers relative to the Tanisha Anderson incident. And it was a really, just a sad incident. It really is. And it was a very difficult process all the way through. Relative to the rape investigations, the Chief's office conducted an administrative review of the detective who was assigned to the sex crimes unit and child abuse unit. That was completed. The facts in that case were presented to the city prosecutor. I believe they were also presented to the county prosecutor. No charges were filed, but there was a recommendation for charges by the Chief's office. Came to my office. I conducted a disciplinary hearing for all three officers involved in that case individually, which was Commander McPike, Sergeant McMahon, and Detective Ross. I reviewed all the investigative reports relative to that. I reviewed all the transcripts relative to those three disciplinary hearings. And after everything was completed, I sustained the recommendation of charges against those three officers. Commander McPike will be demoted to captain. within the Division of Police. Sergeant McMahon was suspended for 15 days, and current Sergeant Ross, who was the detective at the time, who was responsible for the 60 cases, was demoted from sergeant to patrol officer. And I'll turn the podium back over to the chief for any additional comments he may have, or the mayor. Thank you.
Questions?
Chief, you had said that one of the investigations involved agencies outside of the Cleveland Division of Police. What were those agencies? What was their involvement in this?
Yeah, I think the director went over those. Both incidents were investigated by agencies outside the division. The Tanisha Anderson director stated the Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Office and Prosecutor's Office investigated that, as well as the State Attorney General's Office. In this case of the sex crimes investigations, there was an outside independent prosecutor brought in by our city prosecutor to look at that case. And again, that prosecutor came to the conclusion that no criminal charges would be filed. And as a result of that, we completed our administrative investigation and made recommendations of charges to the Director of Public Safety, of which he sustained.
What can be put in place so something like this in the sex crimes does not happen again?
Well, there are a lot of things that are already in place that we're now assuring are being utilized. The Sex Crimes Child Abuse Unit falls under a section of special investigations, and there are other things that now the deputy chief in charge of that section is also putting in place, again, to make sure these things don't happen in the future.
Can you be more specific?
Not at this time, because I don't, I just can't really get too deep into that again. There's another process here that's going to happen probably shortly after this, and we don't want to kind of get too deep into things.
Was Sergeant Ross the only person in the unit who was substantially behind on his caseload?
We did conduct an audit of all detectives assigned to Sex Crimes Child Abuse Unit, and so far that audit has shown that he's the only detective that was that far behind on his cases.
Is the sex crimes unit adequately staffed?
Well, the Sex Crimes Unit is staffed up to what the division can supply it right now. We're looking at all the units throughout the division, as well as our basic patrol section. That's why we're hiring an additional 250 officers. Hopefully by this time next year, they'll be out on the streets. And the mayor has given us permission to go above that number if we're able to do that. So we're in the process of trying to make sure we staff all the units and operations within the division to a level where they can operate.
Do you have a number right now for how many cases behind sex crimes is right now?
No, I don't have that number.
Anything else?
How egregious are the lapses in the sex crimes unit? I mean, these are crimes that are especially heinous, to quote law and order, but what can you say to that aspect of it?
Well, any time you have is a sex crime unit, child abuse unit, anything that is not done in what we consider to be a proper way is egregious.
And Mayor, after the Sobel case, the city had put in.
Well, we formed a committee who came up with 26 recommendations, and I think we complied with all 26 of those recommendations. One of those was the staffing. Another was we put them in a new facility. We renovated a space for them. I think we provided some additional technology, things like that. And so we complied with all that. That's why, to your point, we believe we had given all of what we needed to give based on the 26 recommendations that would allow them to do their job.
Then how does something like this happen?
Well, that is part of, as the chief says, there will be another process after this, so we'll imagine a lot of the questions that you ask about the process and procedures and stuff will come up in that process. But at this time, the chief and the director believe that what happened was beyond what would be considered reasonable under any circumstances. and that is why we took the action that he took.
Chief, where is the department as far as trying to catch up on all these cases?
Well, you know, I'll let the chief answer it because there's, you said backlog. I have to get a definition of what a backlog is, you know, because in what's a reasonable time from the time you know something's happened to investigating and all of that, and when do you close this out based on the complexity of it. So it's not just a simple, all these cases or all these backlogs. There's more complexity to it. But go ahead.
Right now, the division, again, we're conducting another audit or assessment, not just of our sex crimes, child abuse unit, but all of our investigative units throughout the division. And, you know, it's been said that staffing is an issue. Staffing's always an issue. People always come and go from all of these specialized units. But as the mayor stated, in this particular case, there were things that happened that had nothing to do with staffing. There were things that happened in this case that shouldn't have happened, and that's why we took the action we took today. So again, we're auditing everything with our investigative units, all the cases. There is no quote-unquote backlog. There's always cases that are still in the process of being investigated in all of our units. That's just the nature of the beast. You know, we always get cases in day in, day out, so you're never going to be completely 100% done with all of the cases in any investigative unit in the city.
But those victims whose cases...
Those cases, I'm sorry, to answer your question, those cases have since been reassigned and investigated, and I have to get the exact number, but I think most of those cases are complete now.
Mayor, you mentioned that staffing was taken care of based on the recommendations, but one of the recommendations was that there be an actual caseload analysis,
Right.
which there was by the Police Executive Research Forum, and it recommended a higher number of detectives than are currently in the unit.
Right.
So is there any talk about staffing up to the level that PERF recommended?
Well, again, as the chief mentioned, we're bringing on additional police officers, and as we do that, then that will give the chief the flexibility on assigning people. Right now, the only one of the only places the chief could redeploy is from the car plant, which would mean the black and whites, the ones out in the zone cars, which would create a very long response time. The fewer cars you have out there, the fewer people you have manning them. But that's part of what he would do.
So is the choice between response time and...
That's not you. No, that's not the choice. The choice is policing the city of Cleveland and preventing crime, and then addressing those crimes in what we believe to be an adequate and responsible way. That's the issue. It's not a choice between this or that. These are things that the chief has to consider. We have the same thing when we're looking at investigating homicides. We have the same thing if we're looking at auto theft. Whenever you have an investigatorial arm of any division, and you have it staffed, depending on what's happening at that time. Right now, I got a report today about the number of people who OD'd over the weekend. And I'm pretty sure as we send that information to HIDA and all of that, it takes a lot of effort to investigate all the ODs that occurred this weekend. So it's not that simple. And so this is something that the chief and the director and even the collective bargaining units talk about all the time. How do we staff up? How do we deploy? How do we reduce crime?
Who will be in charge of the sex crimes now?
Right now, there will be an acting commander in that capacity. We haven't determined who that's going to be. And then as we do when we have vacancies in the command staff or in our supervisory ranks, we will put out what's called an anticipated assignment notice, and members of the division that are interested in that assignment will put in for that assignment.
How did you find out about this? Did a victim call and say their case wasn't known? How did you guys?
There are a lot of things that happened during the course of these events that brought our attention to it. And again, I can't get deep into any of those, but there were a combination of things that came together that brought our attention to this.
So have you or has anyone from the department reached out to those victims?
Yes, we have. Yes, we have.
For those people who aren't getting the answers in their cases?
Yes, we've reached out to all the victims that were involved in this case.
And what's their response then?
Well, I can't tell you specific responses because I haven't talked to them personally, but I know we have our victim advocates that are assigned to the Sex Crimes Child Abuse Unit, as well as our detectives and supervisors, and we have reached out to those victims. All right, thank you.